Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 178. The last couple weeks have been a bit of a blur for me for a bunch of weird reasons. I don't want to just spend I feel like I might have even said this last time, with the month-long gap, but I don't like spending all the time explaining well, what. So, okay, you know what I think is so funny? I think it's so funny because it kind of makes me feel, it's like when you watch reality television, you watch Honey Boo Boo or something, and you're like, well, at least I'm not like that. My mom used to say that, even though we were honestly financially not that much better. But we had class, god damn it. we had manners, I guess. I think it's really funny when a YouTuber with 300 subscribers and 4 videos takes a break for 6 months because they were, I don't know, they had a real job or something, he says, doing YouTube. And then they make a video that's update where I've been. Plans for the channel. I'm going to give you a word of advice. Guys, if any of you are amateur YouTubers like myself, you don't need to do that. You don't need to, you can just start making the videos again. People don't really care that much. People don't care that much. And even my explanation isn't very interesting. I'm really unfocused and distracted. I've also been just, stressed out by the events of the world. And I think ambient stress, I didn't realize how much that can just throw you off. The fact that you're just kind of always thinking about something else in the background and is something going to happen? I went to therapy for about a year to help with, I would say, a pretty severe anxiety problem that I had. And now I'm a lot better at managing it, and it still comes up occasionally. But one of the things about an anxiety disorder that kind of makes you feel I don't know, it makes it feel a lot more approachable, is that it tends to be irrational. When you take a step back, you go, it's really not a problem, and most things in my life, I can do that. I can say, it's not a big deal. Or you can work it out, whenever so-and-so thing comes up, right? And partially I think that makes it a little easier to deal. Obviously, that's a rational approach to an irrational problem, but there's still the understanding of that. What sucks is when you're man, I'm feeling really anxious about stuff that I think is actually kind of real. I think this is actually kind of real. This is worrying about a mortgage kind of stuff. It's fuck, but I don't even have power over stuff. It's just world events, One day when I have, maybe while I'm taking a week's break or something, right now, now that I've got my video out. Do you guys see why that took 2 months also? I want to make a video about one of my favorite movies, The Damned, or These Are the Damned, because that, weirdly enough, kind of makes me feel better about the world. It's a very bleak movie, but it feels kind of cathartic because of it. I relate a lot to one of the main characters, and thinking about him, weirdly enough, makes me feel better about stuff. I'll get to that later someday. Go watch The Damned. It's free on YouTube. It's from 1964, something like that. 63 to 65. It got shelved. It was censored. It was forced out of theaters because the UK government was afraid that it was too political. It was given an X rating because it's about it has elements of Cold Wars. I guess I don't know. It freaked too many people out. Great movie. One of my favorites. I talked about it on this podcast. There's an old clip where I'm talking about it. So I don't know. I wanted a podcast today because I getting the video out, I feel I'm not in work mode anymore. I can kind of relax and play some games and stuff. And talking kind of helps me work through stuff. Maybe listening helps you work through, I don't know. We don't have any questions from last time. But remember that you can ask a question in the comments if you're curious, and I will get to it next time if you really want to hear my thoughts. If you want to hear my thoughts, but you also don't... If you're like, I don't want to hear this guy's thoughts, I'm going to listen to the 2-hour podcast, though. Anyway, you probably skipped all this. I attended a battle-hardened event for Flesh and Blood. This is one of the things that helps me manage my anxieties, going out and being social and stuff like that. That really helps me. Anyway, Battle Hardens, I want to talk about this because I like competition. I like competing, and even if you don't play Fab, the best trading card game on the market, by the way, I don't know. I don't need to justify anything. So they have these events, which I guess are like mid-level competitive events called Battle Hardens, which are just like, I would say, fairly large tournaments that are held somewhat frequently around the country or anywhere where the game is organized. I'm not like super familiar with how that stuff goes. The thing with Fab is that you can't just run tournaments willy-nilly, because that actually like has, because of the living legend system, which I think I talked about a few episodes ago. It's the leaderboard system where heroes who win a lot get more points, and then they rotate out when they hit a certain threshold. If you just start adding events, official events, it literally like makes heroes rotate faster. Like, it makes the game change more. This was actually notable for that reason. You see, the leaderboard updates every Monday. So a hero can technically hit like 1,000 plus points, but not actually rotate until, the next week. And Battle Hardened was happening over the weekend. So one of the 2 heroes who was rotating out was Enigma, who is she's a mystic illusionist. She's been very strong. People don't like her because she is like a super defensive, turtley set play. Oh god, I'm using fighting game terms already. We're gonna talk about Elena later too. She's like Elena, kinda. She turtles a lot and is super defensive, and then she puts out a big old thing that sticks on the board, and she could just swing at you with it for increasingly more damage each turn, and like it's genuinely really hard to like beat through. I was a little bit excited about this. So, okay, I was excited because Enigma's going to Living Legend. That means a bunch of people are, like, it was locked in, I think. Everyone knew. She was, like, right on the cusp. And it might have been even earlier in the week. Like, yeah, she's got the points, so we're just waiting out the rest of the week. So, a bunch of people want to play Enigma because it's the last chance they're going to get at a regular classic constructed tournament. And I was like rubbing my little hands in deviousness because my hero that I've been mainlining for since I started the game, Azalea, despite being a fairly mid-tier hero, Azalea has a pretty good Enigma matchup, which is random. A lot of people get surprised by it because Azalea tends to struggle into defensive decks, but you're kind of able to just kill her fast enough that she can't like set up. Like, sometimes you can't, but it's a lot more even than you would expect. And I was kind of looking forward to, like, actually maybe going in and getting, I don't know, a couple wins. So we get there, and the tournament is 7 rounds long because of the number of entrants that there were. And I was like, okay, as long as I walk out with 1 win, I think I'll be okay. That's what I told myself. Just 1 win. That's my goal. And then I had a run of like the worst 4 or 5 of the worst possible matchups. The worst possible matchups that I could have in this game. And stuff that wasn't even like particularly strong in the meta. I have good matchups against meta heroes randomly. Fab's an interesting game because you can have a mid-tier hero can have good matchups against good heroes and bad matchups against other mid-tiers. It's a very fascinating game. It's just kind of like the general spread of your matchups is sort of how you determine roughly how good a deck is or hero is. Round 1 was a mirror match. Round 2, what the fuck was my round 2? Round 2 was an Aurora, which just steamrolls me and kills me way faster than I can kill her. Round 3 was a Vincent, which is a horrible matchup for me. Vincent's a Shadow Rune Blade, which is like, can play really defensively and block my stuff out, and also just straight banish cards from my hand, which is crippling, because I need 4 card hands to do most combos. Like, actual good. The deck is entirely based, Azalea is entirely based around shooting 1 billion damage at your opponent, and you kind of need a full hand for that. Into another Vincent. Into, what the fuck do I have after that? I had a bye. Someone dropped out of the tournament, so that was like the one win I got. And the whole time, like, okay, Flesh and Blood is a game that I think even when you lose can be very fun. Because oftentimes, I had a very exceptional run of bad luck, I'll say that. But oftentimes, games that someone is, like, even if you're, like, favored, it'll be pretty close, you know? Like, it can go down to, like, below 10 life or something like that. And you can at least feel like, okay, there was a little bit of wiggle room. Maybe my draws were a little bad. Maybe I didn't play the most optimally, right? On top of maybe just matchup stuff that you're at a disadvantage with, if you're on the losing end or something like that. It's generally a game that I think is still very exciting even when you lose, because of this is almost like another topic entirely. Fab is the only trading card game that I've ever played where life points actually matter. Every other game, like Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, Hearthstone, the thing, like, if there's a card that's like, pay all but 1 of your life, but also get you like 95% to winning the game, everyone would play that all the time. It would be like an auto include, because it's like, well, if you don't literally die doing it, if it doesn't automatically lose you the game, and it is so good, like the risk reward, like who cares if I'm at 1 life? That's the adage that I learned very quickly. When I actually started looking into playing, like, Hearthstone was where it really started, because that was the first game that I started learning on a semi-competitive, like just dipping my toe. I'd say, you know, like a mid-core level of interest. Is the only life point that matters is your last one. Anything before that, like, screw it, free to spend. Which is why a lot of, like, you know, life, things that require life to do stuff that's like really juiced up compared to a regular card, but you got to pay life for it, tends to be worth it. So like, you can be really willy-nilly with your life total in a lot of card games, but in Fab it's actually super important, because life is, the way I describe it is that your life is the resource that you spend to get tempo back. If you have like a 10 life advantage on your opponent, unless they're throwing something incredibly crippling at me, I'm just like not going to block that shit. I'm going to hold all my cards in my hand. I'm not going to use any of them to defend. And I'm going to play a full 4-card hand next turn, and I'm going to keep tempo because I'm in the lead. And if you put up stuff to block this with, and you're not like a very defensive deck, like a Guardian or Warriors can play kind of defensively. Some Rune Blades can. Some Rune Blade builds can. You're just going to like lose like half your hand, like 3/4 of your hand to blocking my stuff out. And I'm just going to be like chipping away at what you can do. When it passes back to you, you have like 1 or 2 cards in hand. Some heroes can play through that and they don't mind. Like Rune Blades, one of the reasons it's not a great matchup is that Rune Blades can do a lot of shit with like 2 cards. But I need a lot. So life totals are actually very important in Fab. And if I'm at the disadvantage, sometimes I can say, no, I'm going to hold, I believe in my hand. I'm going to hold off and I'm not going to block at all. And that can be the start of your comeback. When you say, nope, I'm going to go down to dangerously, scarily low health levels so that I can potentially turn this around. And that makes the game very exciting, because in a game that's even kind of evenly matched, even just a little bit, you're going to be doing those trades back and forth where you're going to say, I'm going to give up I'm gonna give up like 10 life, like a quarter of my max health, or my starting life at least, to do something, because I'm gonna push for something, and the opponent's probably gonna be doing that too. The games I was having were just awful. Like they weren't even. It was not even close. That's what was kind of bumming me out. I had a real I was really bummed. I was getting increasingly bummed out throughout the day because it wasn't just that I was losing, it's that the gameplay was bad. You can I had friends who lost most of their games and they still had a good time. But I was like, fuck, another Vincent, what the fuck? God damn it. So round 6, I get the bye, and it's like, is this really going to be my only win? It's just a technicality. And I was so tired. I'd also woken up at like midnight. I'd woken up like at the earliest possible second of the day for some reason. And I'd been awake, and now it was like 3:30. And I was just tired. I was kind of run through. I was through the ringer. I wasn't having an amazing time. I would try to keep in good spirits, but I wasn't having an amazing time, taking my lumps. Final round comes around, and I'm matched. The guy shows me. I was in a state where it was like, so the first thing you do when you sit down is you present your hero to your opponent, because you need to give people, there's a whole like pre-match sideboarding period where you're like, okay, your sideboard is like cards that you keep on the side. It's like a max of 15. It's kind of like having players on bench. And then for certain matchups, you can swap out cards in between. So I had like a little meager sideboard for like 1 or 2 matchups that I never ran into. So the first thing you do is just present your hero. And I see this guy. I was at the point where I was like, if they show like a Jarl or some kind of like a Guardian, which is like basically an auto lose for me, I'm just going to scoop. I'm just going to scoop my shit up and just walk out. I'm going to say, all right, fuck it. I don't want to do it. I'm not expending the mental energy required to play this game. But he shows Ira, who's a ninja. And I'm like, a ninja? Wait, that's like a workable kind of fun matchup, because we're both aggro, but you're not like insane aggro, not like insane top tier aggro like an Aurora or a Zen. It's like, Ira, not okay. I can work with that. And you know what? That was an amazing game. It was super close. My opponent was really cool. One of my other friends actually played against him and was like, that guy was a total bro. He was super cool. It felt a lot more casual because it was like last round, we were both, basically 0 wins through the entire thing. That's how they match you in Swiss format. You get matched with someone of a similar record to you. So we were just like, kind of casually like, fuck it, and we were kind of chatting during the game, and it got really close, and both of us made some really good plays and some tough calls, and it went down to 1-1, and I had 2 good turns in a row, and I feel like I barely squeaked it out with some really, really good plays and some really like holding stuff until the last second and playing around certain things that he had and eating damage because I believed in a certain hand or something. And it's like, looking at my hand and think, I have a kind of a 3-card hand. I can give up 1 to block, actually. I have a 3-card combo that I can do. And I just barely won. It was if he had 1 more turn, then he probably could have won. It was incredibly close. And the moment I won, dude, so it was 2 things. It was 1, the tension inside me from focusing really hard on what was on the game, and also just kind of the negative cloud of just that bummer feeling of having such a kind of lame day, a lame run at that point. But the moment I won, it was all of that evaporated. I felt fucking amazing. I felt so good that it made up for the entire day. It made up for the whole day. And we were both like complimenting each other afterwards, and he was super cool. He had a bunch of Japanese cards because he'd made his deck in Japan. I think probably around the time it launched, they had the time the game launched in Japan, it had an event there, I'm pretty sure. And he happened to be visiting, so he made an Ira deck. So he had a bunch of Japanese cards, and we actually had to call the judge over at one point because I had to get a clarification on like our little nuance of something that one of his cards did. That we were like both, wait, does it say that or that? And I was, yeah, that one experience was like, man, that was genuinely, this was all worth it. This was all worth it. Fab is a really fun game. And, you know, talking to him afterwards, he was like, yeah, no, I had a good time. Like, even though he lost everything, he had a good time because most of his games were close. I just got really fucking unlucky. I just had horrible luck. It happens, I guess. It happens. I had a funny experience actually at the very start of the tournament that maybe set off, it was like a bad omen. So, you know, I run Azalea, and no one else at the store currently plays Azalea. No one else in my like local community does. But one guy used to play her and has just, you know, he's got like he's got all the cards you'd ever want for Azalea. And he offered, like a few days before the battle hardened, to lend me like play sets of some of his cards, which was super nice. I accepted because he was playing something else. And I get to the event and we meet up and he hands me the stuff and I thank him, and then I realize I forgot to bring card sleeves. I forgot to bring extra sleeves. Fuck. If anyone's not aware or has never like been in a situation where they had to think about it. So, you know, generally, unless you're like a total newbie, like I was at the very start and you don't own any, you're going to be sleeving your cards up. You're going to be putting them in little sleeves to protect each individual card. And there are rules that are just standard across like every game about card sleeves and the presentation of your cards. Because you're not supposed to know, like a built-in factor of the game is the blind draw from the top of your deck and not knowing where certain cards are, right? So, you know, that's why like every time you have to search through your deck, you then have to shuffle it afterwards so that it's re-randomized after you've looked through it. So you can't just run a deck where like half the cards are unsleeved because that's blatantly, it's card marking. It's playing with marked cards. People do this in like even subtler ways where they'll subtly bend, you know, the corner of one of their sleeves or something like that. They'll put a little mark on it, you know, so that they can see, so they can kind of plan around. Or do some devious shuffling and intentionally put something like closer to the top or something like that. So obviously he hands me a bunch of cards, and before I'd left, I had like unsleeved a bunch of stuff. I'd taken a bunch of stuff out of my deck because I'd made like a new deck list, including all the cards he was going to give me. Probably a bad idea because I got there and I was like, oh fuck, I don't have sleeves to put these in. Shit, I have to go buy sleeves and then unsleeve and re-sleeve the entire deck. And I was like, so that was $15 extra. I guess I have 100 new card sleeves and a deck box out of it. I felt so fucking bad. So at the end of the tournament, I gave him his stuff back, and I took out all the stuff that he'd given me. I unsleeved it, and he's putting it back in his own little sleeves. And he goes, "Oh hey, yeah, next time you put them in, next time you're like when you're sleeving up cards, you should be like a little slower with it." And I looked, and like the top side, just like the top edge of like a pretty valuable card, had a little bend in it. It looked like it had been creased, which was, I was like, what? That felt terrible. That was someone being super. He was very nice about it, you know. There was like one or two other cards that had like little corners bent or something like that he was smoothing out. I felt so fucking bad about that because it was incredibly generous to even lend me it in the first place. And then when someone gives you something and you like damage it, and part of me was like, was I just being super careless? Probably not when I played it. It was probably when I was handling them, when I was frantically re-sleeving a 60 card deck, unsleeving and re-sleeving a 60 card deck like 10 minutes before a tournament started. Ugh. So yeah, bad omens all around. Okay, Capcom, I don't want to hear about saved 87% off during the Capcom. Well, okay. I don't know if the buzz picked up on my on the microphone or whatever. Anyway, organized play is really fun, and you should go to events and stuff. They are cool. I would say overall, I had a really good time. I just also enjoy competitive play. I like going places and playing games with people, even if I'm not. I would describe myself actually in a lot of different games as a mid-core player, which is a term that the Yu-Gi-Oh community has started using to describe what I've previously called like semi-competitive or something. Like I have a general interest in like cool games, so I like to learn about them, and I like to learn about them competitively and occasionally follow them, and I like to play them myself. But I'm also very flaky, and I like to top around a bunch of things. So I don't always want to dedicate a bunch of time and like mental resources to going super deep into being a master of that thing. I'm a real jack of all trades sort of person when it comes to like hobbies. I just like to jump around a lot. I like novelty. Anyway, speaking of other things, I guess that I'm sort of mid-core in, fighting games. We're going to talk about fighting games for a little bit. Although one of these topics is actually like a general game design thing. I held off on recording a little bit because I was waiting for the Elena trailer to come out. Elena for Street Fighter 6. I'm so excited. Capcom has this funny habit of having events for their game that are fairly high profile and then not showing trailers during it. And they've done it a lot during Street Fighter 6 for some reason, despite the fact it's one of the most successful fighting games. It's the most successful fighting game they've had in years. But they have not... I don't know. Their marketing team operates on a level beyond my understanding. The joke is just like, you know, it's on a Tuesday. Well, this time it was on a Thursday, sorry. So the Elena trailer came out. Elena is an interesting character because I think she's had a very weird history in Street Fighter. I've never played Elena seriously because I've liked her. I don't know. Something about her is very appealing to me. It might be like a sexual thing, which is probably part of it. But it's also that I just think her playstyle is kind of interesting. She's like a weird kind of mid-range character. Unfortunately, she's been shackled with some sort of kind of bad luck in the past. In Third Strike, she's just sort of a worse Chun-Li, which is unfortunate. And when I play Third Strike, I would kind of just rather be playing Dudley, who has like... He gets to do Third Strike stuff, but he also gets to do like cool Dudley combo stuff. And Elena kind of gets to do Third Strike stuff, but she doesn't like have much of the combos. She's kind of just like a neutral, just do some pokes and punish stuff, and then she gets like, she can do button special. She can do button super. That's the thing she can do. Dudley, you get to do a neat little juggle that's really fun. And then in Street Fighter 4, which I have not played a lot of, she is like an infamous meta monster. So she goes from like kind of not like very mid tier to like everyone fucking hates this character. I really they did a little breakdown of her moveset on the blog with this new trailer. And this, she has been following in line with a lot of the other returning characters to Street Fighter 6, which is, this is like the coolest version of the character. I think. She has been super fleshed out in a really cool, I think quite elegant way. I'm a big fan of the ways in which Capcom has been expanding on returning characters and not just doing the same thing again. And also not even just like, a lot of them aren't even reworked, you know? It's like Ryu gets 2 cool new moves. Neat. They're sort of new. I don't know. Chun-Li gets like all the Chun-Li stuff, but she gets like this cool stance thing. That's what Elena also has. She gets a cool new stance move. It's very Tekken-like. I'll try to focus up a little bit. Elena is the Kenyan capoeira fighter of Street Fighter. And I think that she's always had the capoeira thing in her animations, not quite as much in her moveset. Her movesets are a little bit dance-like, but I think as a representative of the style, the dance that I'm sure that there's like certain techniques and stuff that they adapted directly, but a lot of her, I don't know. I feel like there's been cooler dance-based, capoeira-based fighters in fighting games. It was always very present in her animations. Like her goddamn idol animation from Third Strike is this insanely detailed rotoscoped animation of her like hopping back and forth. And now I feel like there's a really cool implementation of dancing in her moveset. She's got like pretty much all the stuff she used to have, but she has this new move, it's called Link's Song. And it's basically, she does like a little like forward spin that goes way low profile under projectiles and stuff. So she's still like kind of slippery and weird and hard to hit, which I think has also been like a weird Elena thing. She's very tall, but she's also kind of short, but she has long limbs. She's like Faust. So she can go into this like little forward dash, like spinaroonie thing. And then she's got multiple follow-ups out of that. She has like a kind of lunging kick thing. She has like an upwards kick. She's got like 2 other things. There's one in overhead. One of them is Link's tail, which is I think like the classic no, she doesn't have Link's tail. It's she can do it again. She can go into it twice. She can do the dash twice. And then after, I think it was like, the way they broke it down is like after she does one of her follow-ups, she can do one of the other follow-ups. I believe she can do like a maximum of 2 or something. There's going to be some hard rule on like how many she can do. But she could do like one of the other follow-ups. So she can do like spinaroonie into like a wheel kick into like another spinaroonie into like the lunging kick or something like that, which is really neat because it visually it looks awesome because she's literally dancing between stuff. She's doing a dance. I think that's the idea with all of her moves. She's doing different dance moves and you're like sequencing them together to make these like unique patterns and stuff, which maybe I'm just like, no, I know Eddie Gordo in Tekken is probably similar, but I don't know. It's such a cool, visually cool thing as someone who is not a big Tekken player or much of a Tekken player at all. It's such a neat idea for a dance character is to let them chain their specials together and they're all different dance moves. It's very flavorful and cool. They were so I should mention that I watched, because I was just around at the time, I watched the premiere on YouTube, which meant that I got of the trailer, which meant that I got to read the chat as it was flying by. And the one thing everyone was healing. Oh God, healing. They didn't show it, and I literally, like, they cut to, there's no healing in the whole trailer. They cut to, like, releasing this or whatever. The end of the trailer. And I see the chat going, no healing, thank God. No healing. And then the very last second is her doing her level 2 into healing. Everyone went, no! And I think that's a very interesting situation. Elena's healing, because it reminds me a lot of another related thing in fighting games with a very similar idea of another healing character. And it really elucidates this... It exemplifies. It really exemplifies this adage that I've heard, which is that players are very good at identifying... Sorry. I would actually update it a little. The one I've heard is players are good at identifying problems and bad at presenting solutions. I would say players, even more than that, I would say players are good at identifying their emotions, but not always good at identifying the root causes of the emotions or presenting solutions. And that's why, because they can't identify the root causes. What I'm saying is they have to go to therapy. They need to go to therapy and interrogate the situation. So Elena is this, as I mentioned before, infamous meta monster. She is like the turtle of all turtles in Street Fighter 4. And what everyone points to as what made her broken is her healing. So Elena's Ultra 2, I think, in Street Fighter 4 is healing. She heals a little bit of her life back. If you don't know, the Ultras in Street Fighter 4 were like the game's main comeback mechanic. So it was a separate bar of like a super meter style bar that filled up as you took damage. And blocked, I think? I guess you take a little chip damage. It fills up as you take damage, as you get beat up. That's the main way. So Elena's Ultra 2 was kind of the culprit, and that kind of absorbed a lot of the hate, and people have like these nightmare flashbacks about how much healing she would do. And it's true that, yes, there is an inherent problem with that because it's a healing super, and you get to do it when you get beat up, which means that even despite the fact that she had, like, I think slightly lower health than the average character in that game, she would actually have effectively, in practice, more health than the average character because she would heal back. She had like 1.5 life bars, essentially. Or 2, I don't know. I don't know how crazy you would get. Like, you could do healing like 2 or 3 times in a set. And everyone points to that as the one thing. But I think it's misunderstanding the root cause, which is that the healing is the cherry on top. There's a story from the development of Killer Instinct 2013, or I guess the active development of KI, where I don't remember what season, but at some point in KI, Jago, the main like Ryu type character of the game, was really strong. And everyone was pointing, all the players, hey, they said nerf Jago's healing. Every character, it's actually very similar to Elena. KI also has a sort of comeback mechanic called Instinct, which is like a thing that you can pop once a round? Does it fill up? I haven't played KI in a bit. But it's every character gets some kind of unique instinct thing that like buffs up one of their gimmicks or something like that, or just gives them some kind of a bonus. Jago's lets him heal. And people were like, the healing on Jago is too powerful, you need to nerf it. And they looked at the situation and the character, and they decided that the problem wasn't really that Jago's healing was too good. It's that Jago had no significant weaknesses. He was basically a flawless character, right? He was a master of all. He had really good tools for controlling space at any range. He could, he had good close buttons. He had good mid-range buttons, like good pokes and stuff. He had a fireball that he could zone from full screen with. He had good defensive options because he had like an invincible uppercut type move. He had, multiple anti-airs in that style. He could close the gap very quickly with his wind kick, which is sort of like the Tatsu, just flying kick move that he had. He could close the gap very quickly, which meant that he could confirm off of stuff from mid-screen very fast. He did good damage. It was just the character had no real significance. If he was on offense, if he was on defense, if he was at any point in the screen, he could do something pretty strong. And what players were actually feeling was, you're fighting this uphill battle the entire time. The entire time. You have to fight this master of all type character. And you finally beat him up enough, and you're getting kind of close. And then he pops Instinct, and you literally watch your progress vanish in front of your eyes. It's like you're watching time roll back. Different kind of roll back. And that feels terrible. If his Instinct just made him deal more damage, or if it just made him take less damage, I think that would psychologically be way less damaging than the healing. Loss of progress in QA, when they're searching for bugs, they categorize bugs in different classes like A to D, with D being like, I think they call them shippables, of like, this is fine if it makes it in, we can get to it, but it's a last priority type of thing, to A, which is, we need to fix this now. We need to fix this immediately. Any kind of bug that erases your progress is immediately class A. Immediately. It's elevated to that level. If there's like a random spot in the game where you can do something and it crashes, and then when you boot it back up, you've lost like you're back to like the previous save or whatever, or it erases save data progress, immediately fix that shit now, programmers. Fix it now. Because from a user experience, from a player experience, I mean, it's not even just video games. Like, if you're working on something and you lose like a chunk of it to like a computer crash, it feels so bad. It feels so bad. And something like Jago's healing or Elena's healing is that in like game design. It is the removal of progress. Healing is less frustrating in other genres, like say a MOBA, maybe an MMO, like PvP, I guess. Namely because they are kind of designed around healing. When you're designing a MOBA, you tune a character's, like a support's healing to hopefully kind of be in line where like they have healing. It's something you have to consider. You might have to target the healer. But generally damage can kind of keep up with healing a little bit in certain circumstances. That's kind of like where most devs try to balance. In fighting games, healing is very rare. So that's not like a common thing that you have to deal with. And Elena is essentially, the real problem with Elena in Street Fighter 4 is that she has incredibly safe long-range normals that if you like even block them mid-screen or anywhere on screen, she can instantly put you into like multiple consecutive guessing games. And then if she hits you, which she's like honestly pretty likely to do unless you are extremely like good at guessing or reading the opponent, she's just gonna like not even advance on you, but just keep turtling. She's just gonna keep playing defensively. She has an uppercut. She has like a DP scratch wheel to anti-air you if you try to jump at her. She's just super safe. She's super safe. She has incredible reward. And it's a complete off, like the balance of risk to reward is super off. So when you're fighting, when you're just trying to get in and just trying to do anything against her, and you've finally kind of gotten her down to like 30-40% life, and then she just gets one hit and knocks you away and goes healing, and then she heals back like half of it, and you're like, ah, and that's the emotional cinch that just kills you. It's just excruciating from a player perspective. It's a terrible experience. So that being said, people doom as soon as they see healing. I think people are joking about it a little more. The implementation of that kind of an ability in Street Fighter 6 is going to be very different. I believe the way that they're implementing it, the way that they described it is during her level 2, so it's already like 2 bars, right? You're gonna have to spend 2 bars. So during her level 2, you can forsake some damage. There's probably some additional like special input you do during it, and then she'll heal a little bit back. How much? I don't know. So there is like a trade-off that she has to make. This is that was kind of a thing in Street Fighter 4 where she could do a short or a long heal and cancel out of it early. So she's leaving some damage on the table, but I predict it will be more acceptable in a game like 6 because for a couple of reasons. Number one is that it is not a comeback factor. It's not built into a comeback mechanic. It's built into something that she has to play offense for, is her meter. Second, level 2s, it's like a genuine trade-off to make because depending on the character, level 2 is a very awkward amount of meter to spend. A lot of characters, there are certain characters who go for either level 1 or 3, and some of them, like say Rashid, are all in on that level 2. Blanca's the same way. Like Blanca's all about the level 2. Because otherwise it's like the way that meter building tends to work out in terms of the pace of the match, if you do pull off a level 2, you're not really going to be able to do a level 2 and a level 3 in the same set unless it goes very long. So you're kind of consigning yourself to to just leaving damage on the table in the first place. And then Street Fighter 6 is just it's a much more aggressive game. It's just a more aggro game on top of the fact that she's going to actually have to fight for that. For that meter. It's a more aggro game with Drive Rush and how fast you can just get in on the opponent. So she'll probably, I think, just naturally be able to play very defensively because that's sort of just her toolkit. She's an entirely kick-based fighter. But it's going to incentivize more interaction. It will probably be annoying to some degree, but I don't think nearly as bad. The fact that they didn't make it a level 2 exclusive thing also kind of implies to me the healing isn't going to be very strong. If her level 2 was just healing, which a lot of people were predicting, probably would have been a decent chunk. If I spend 2 bars on a healing super, it better heal me some actual damage back up. I imagine the healing will be like medium. It'll be fine. But SF6 can be a very explosive game. And I think it'll naturally balance out. So, yeah. That's my... Elena looks very cool. I think the way that they've developed out her moveset is really neat. I don't know, just exciting. Like, it makes me want to play the character. Anytime there's a returning character to Street Fighter 6, it's always fun. You know, we've had... not too many so far in terms of the actual season. Or in terms of the game's DLC. We've got like 2 guest characters. And a couple new ones. But anytime a returner comes back, like they got to do Dudley at some point. And I am very, very excited about Dudley and what he could look like in this game. And what new stuff are they going to give him? Are they going to give him back that weird charge move? People don't even know he has that in Street Fighter 4. It's like this weird down-up charge move where he like spins into the air and comes back down. It's super random. I don't even know what it's used for. You never see people use it. But yeah, no, Street Fighter 6. Cool. It makes me want to play. I saw the trailer and I was like, I'm so glad I have like a few days to myself because I I can play the game. I want to get to something we started recently. So we finished Stardust Crusaders. This is the continuation of the Taigen rewatching and taking Cat for the first time through JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's a really good title. You guys are good. It's like a Japanese light novel title. So we finished part 3 a while ago, and I talked about it. I believe I talked about it. Talked about finishing it. No. That was actually, we did that podcast together. Well, we just got around to starting part 4, which Kat was more interested in, just because of the way that I described it to her. She had also told me during like part 2 that she really liked the scenes where the characters were kind of just talking and hanging out. And I said, oh, you're probably going to like part 4. That's a lot of part 4. It feels very, very casual, I guess. Which is funny, I say that because it starts with like the beginning of part 4 is very brutal, which I think a lot of people forget. The beginning of part 4 has some really like, there's that scene they added at the start of the anime where you get like, I don't even want to spoil it, but it's like the dramatic kind of pan out thing. The first like arc is fucking Angelo, which is like, dude, I forgot that he like grabs a dog and like bites its face off and then spits the face and the blood back into the owner's open mouth. I forgot that I was like, yeah, this is the fun part. This is like the fun, lighthearted JoJo part. Araki kind of just can't help himself. Also, by the way, that's the last dog that dies in the series. That's the very last one. He stops doing it after part 4. After that, he got it all out of his system, I guess. What a way to go out. And then, he spits the blood and the face into the owner's open mouth, and then has his stand, which was inside of because a liquid-based stand, so it was inside the blood, then ripped the guy's head off and like into a million pieces from the inside. This is the fun, lighthearted slice of life arc of JoJo. But once you get through that, honestly, it's pretty, the first couple episodes, it's pretty lighthearted. Genuinely. Going back and watching part 4 is a really interesting experience. I was not expecting to have so much to say about JoJo on a rewatch. When I first watched this back in like 2017, I believe it had just finished airing. And I basically went from Stardust Crusaders and then I binged part 4 in like 3 days. And then I went straight on to part 5. And I consumed a lot of the series over the course of like 2 weeks. I think looking back on it now, man, part 4 is really good. Part 4 is really good. It's not just the fact that like it's really different. It's not just the fact that it's like a change of pace. It's that it's executed so well. I haven't read the manga, but I think a lot of things really hit their stride starting with part 4 from both the original like source material standpoint and the anime adaptation. So the biggest thing is that structurally, they totally switched up how they handle the series. So part 1 and 2 were in a combined 24 episode season, with part 2 taking up most of that. Part 3 was in 2 24 episode seasons. So total of 48 episodes for part 3. From part 4 onwards, it has been 39 episode seasons. I believe with like one recap episode that's just a clip show, which isn't included in like any of the, it's like basically in airing only. It's only in the TV broadcast. I don't think anyone ever includes it on streaming or anything, but that's it. That's aside from the recaps, a clean 39 episode season. And you're like, that's a very weird number. That's a very specific number. What is that based on? I don't know, but it works really well for the series. So much so that like they have managed to take at least parts 4 and 5, which have radically different lengths, fit them into 39 episodes, and they both feel really good. It feels like nothing's really, I can say for part 5, nothing felt left out. In fact, they added stuff for part 5. Like they took the opportunity to add stuff. That's good. Part 4 is fairly lengthy, but it fits really neatly into 39 episodes. And it's also like that. The biggest problem with part 3 in the anime is that it's too long. It's just too long. The manga might actually be better in that respect, but part 3 really drags out. And that's the one thing that people will tell you is it's long. I appreciated it more on a rewatch, but man, it drags occasionally. It ends very strong. But before that, it's part 4. We finished at the Let's Go Eat Italian because I really wanted to get to that episode at the least. We finished at Let's Go Eat Italian the last time we sat down to watch it. And that's a great episode. And man, there's been like no misses. Even the really, I don't know. Part 4 is interesting from like a shonen manga perspective, a shonen battle manga perspective, because it explicitly powers down the story, but it gets better. Like the stories get better. And for anyone who doesn't know, well, I say explicitly because there's like an interview where Araki literally talked about this. Part 4, I believe, started running around like 1992, something like that. And he was observing the path that... So he had just finished part 3, and the backstory to this is that actually Araki only ever planned for 3 parts. He planned for it to be a trilogy, and it would tell the story of the Joestars versus the Brandos, and it would culminate with them finally, defeating Dio again. For good this time. And then his editor was like, can you do like one more? And he was like, sure. Okay, I'll do like one more. And he came up with part 4. And part 4 is great because when you look at it from that perspective, it really does feel like he's in his retirement. Like he was planning on just retiring the series. Like he got all the serious business out of the way. And now part 4, he can kind of just relax and doesn't have to worry about pushing things too hard. And there's this very like playful, kind of light and loose attitude to the writing of part 4 that is really endearing to me on a rewatch. Part 3 is very serious. We got to go here. We got to save Jotoro's mom. We got to defeat Dio. And that's every episode. It's this really serious action thing. Same with part 2 for the most part. Even though Joseph's a very fun, like, freewheeling protagonist, it is like, okay, well, he's going to die if he doesn't defeat the Pillar Men, by this date. So there is like a seriousness to it. Part 4 has there is a long-term goal, but it's just kind of like most episodes are just someone gets superpowers that probably shouldn't, and then they kind of act selfishly with them. That's like most episodes. Araki saw what was going on with Dragon Ball and other similar shonen, and even though those were so successful, he had honestly a pretty commendable level of foresight. And he was like, I don't know where Dragon Ball was in its arc at that point. That would have been on Z, And he was like, so is he just gonna like keep making stronger and stronger guys for Goku to fight? That feels like it would get really hard after a bit, because Araki has said in the past that he has trouble with sort of like not planning the nitty gritty details out, and he has literally said that he writes himself into a corner where he genuinely like doesn't know how the characters are going to get out of something. And I think that that's kind of fun because he actually puts pressure on himself to come up with something, and that makes the solutions the characters come up with feel really ingenious. He rarely, if ever, goes for like total ass pulls, right? That almost never happens in the series. So I'm sure that he was maybe kind of aware of his tendency to do that, and then saw like, fuck, do I have to make a guy who's stronger than Dio? And he decided to go in the exact opposite direction. And he doesn't even have the idea for Kira. He doesn't even have the idea for the main villain of the part until like halfway through. Like, he's really just goofing off and having fun. So he was like, well, what if I take the exact opposite approach and I make part 4 really low powered? And there are some like pretty strong stand. Like Okuyasu, it's like this infamous meme, right? Okuyasu's stand, the hand, is absurdly powerful. He can just erase space and like it seals up where he erased it, right? It like, connects back together. What's the word? It like the space around it filled. It creates like essentially a vacuum, and he can do it with like that, like anything. Insanely powerful stand, but he's like a dummy, the goofy dumbass, right? So he's not like that dangerous, or he's not these. If it was a villain, if he was like Vanilla Ice, it would be scary. But he's like kind of a goofball, and he's only really scary because of the influence he gets from his older brother. But other than that, he just kind of like, honestly, he doesn't even use the hand that much. He doesn't like, it's a violent stand, and he's not a very inherently violent guy, which is sort of funny. Maybe there's some symbolism with like filling in the gaps or something, like where something was missing. I don't know. I mean, when Koichi first gets his stand, it's like, it's not even a combat stand. One of the earliest arcs is a guy who gets the ability to make people feel their guilt physically as like a physical weight. And he uses it to do like ambulance chaser scams to like guilt people into giving him money because it becomes physically unbearable. And there's like a lot of stuff in the part that's like that. There's enemies and they can get into like life-threatening situations. The fucking Yukako arc is crazy. But it's just it's really fun. That's like the main word for part 4, is a lot of it is just really fun. And it helps a lot that the anime tackles it by using mainly one episode each. There's a couple like there's like a 3-parter. There's like the Nijimura Brothers part 3, which Kat noticed. And before that, it was like, I think the only arc that went that long was Dio. And that's mainly, they do 3 parts for the Nijimura Brothers, mainly just because, like, I don't know, but it doesn't feel like it's taking that long. It feels like the story it doesn't feel like it's padding out because they had to hit a certain episode count. It feels like it had to take that long to set up that early part of the story. And then it's just like one off, 2-parter, one off. That's a lot of them. The story is moving along at a very brisk clip. Occasionally part 3 could feel like a bit of a slog. Some of the episodes just felt like, man, these characters' internal monologues are going on a fucking while. It's a little much. Part 4 has been very breezy. I forgot about how intense like the very start of it was. Man, there's so much random stuff to talk about. I laughed a little bit during the scene. I call it the media literacy scene. Which is from like episode 2 or something. I know media literacy has become a little bit of like, it's a little overused to just, whenever someone disagrees with me about something. But JoJo fans can be a special breed, and their obstinacy in even trying to read into like anything at all beyond the surface level is impressive. It's the scene where, kind of spoilers for part 4, I guess skip to whatever the next segment is when Jotaro is... It's after Angelo has killed Josuke's grandfather, who's only been in the story for like 1 episode. So he's not... You feel bad. It's important to Josuke. It's not super important to the viewer, but it's a big moment for Josuke because he's like 14, you know. He's lived his life pretty. I would say, you know, he hasn't been in something of this magnitude. Is his fucking grandfather just got killed by a guy who was trying to kill Josuke. So there's a lot going on, and he's not super emotionally mature, and he is used to, you know, he has his stand Crazy Diamond. It's inherently, I love the symbolism of it in that it's a very giving stand, specifically giving, because Josuke, he can revert things that are broken or things that are, anything that's been broken by his stand, or just in general, he can revert to a previous state, but he can change the form that it takes when it's fixed back. Which is like a metaphor for how a lot of part 4 is. A lot of fights in part 4 are the main character beats someone up. It's usually Josuke beats someone up and then they kind of chill out. It's kind of like this inheritance from Jonathan. One of Jonathan's, I'd say, like traits was his ability to change people's hearts by being so good and being so inspiring to other people. He's like this shining light of justice and nobility and love. And Josuke inherits that, like that's in the Joestar blood. That's what he gets kind of out of his heritage. And thus Crazy Diamond is a stand that breaks things and then fixes them in a way that Josuke, you know, chooses, or the way that he can fix it to make it better or something like that. But notably, he can't use it on himself. So he can heal other people's injuries, but not his own. So it's an inherently giving stand. Even though Josuke might act like a punk, he has so much love to give. And even if he kind of shows it in maybe a rough way, occasionally, he's always well-intentioned, and he's always trying to help people. And he has like a real sense of justice, and another very common like JoJo trait is disdain for people who pick on those weaker than them. You know, that's I'd say that's inherently a Jonathan thing. It's it's not really a Joseph thing. It's a Jotaro thing a little bit. It's a Josuke thing. It's very much a Giorno thing. That's like Giorno's entire motivation. That's like a recurring element, and that's like symbolized in a pretty cool way through Crazy Diamond. And he's like trying to, I was talking about his grandpa. He's trying to heal his grandpa's injuries, and he's just dead. The guy's just dead. And he can heal a body, but he can't bring the soul back. And Josuke is in denial. He's in the first stage of grief. He thinks he can still do something about it, and he's just furiously using his stand on his grandfather and trying to heal him back. And Jotaro is just standing there. And I really like Jotaro, not as I think Jotaro is a fine protagonist. I think he probably played very well in like that, you know, Fist of the North Star era, where that kind of a big tough guy protagonist was really really in, you know, that was sort of the style of the time. But I really appreciate how Araki builds on his character and realistically matures him. Araki has a real knack. You don't see a ton of characters who are like, you know, repeat across parts, but when he does show you how a character, you know, who's 10 years older behaves, he is really good at it. Jotaro's just standing there, and he's kind of letting Josuke go through it a little bit, and then he tells him, Josuke, you know, once the soul is gone, you can't do anything about it. It just there is no stand that can bring back the dead. And eventually Josuke just has to accept it. And it's a good scene. It develops Josuke's character. It shows him that stuff's getting real and there's consequences for this, and it's not just fun and games. It's a bit of a growing up moment for him. And it also shows how Jotaro has grown up. Part 3 Jotaro would have never said something like that. He would have told Josuke to like shut the fuck up and like stop crying or something like that. But he has this like tenderness, just a little bit. He's still like a big, tall, quiet guy, but he's a little more worldly, and he's experienced enough, and it feels like he's kind of gotten over some of his personal, like trouble with his emotions, and he can actually do something that's a kind moment for Jotaro. Jotaro would act kind. He would do things that in part 3 that were kind. I mean, he cares about I think like there's the scene at the very start where he knows that something's wrong with his mom because she doesn't tell him, she doesn't send him off at the door and say like, I love you, have a good day. And he knows immediately that something's off, right? He obviously cares. He just has trouble showing it. And he's kind of emotionally stunted, probably because like he grew up without a dad, and he has a bit of like a smothering mom, and he probably feels a little weird. This is just my interpretation of his character. Maybe he feels a little weird because he's like mixed, and he's like a high schooler in Japan. Like maybe he's got some identity stuff. He has an interest in science. Like I think at the very start in the first episode of part 3, they say he wants to become a marine biologist, which he does in later on. And he just doesn't have like a big support network. He probably feels like a bit of an outsider. He's also just like a fucking teenager, He's having like an identity crisis, and it's sort of, I think it's part of it is manifesting in him he's really having trouble showing his emotions. Also, he is super into, much like Araki, a lot of Western, oh my God, I just want to talk about Jotaro for a second. He's really into like 80s action movies. And there's this really particular depiction of like men in 80s action movies that's become pretty infamous through like so many parodies, right? And it's like, because Araki's a huge fan of like Dirty Harry and I guess The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is an Italian film, but that kind of why can't I remember his name? It's one of those things where it's well, that is not what I wanted to look up. Fucking actor? Who's he based on? Oh my God. I'm just gonna look up Dirty Harry. Clint Eastwood. Araki's a big fan of Clint Eastwood and movies and that ilk. And he said before in interviews that that kind of character and that kind of like American action hero informed his own idea of what a hero is. Like the 70s and 80s action hero, which I know the 70s and 80s are pretty different decades in terms of American cinema, but there is a through line of a certain kind of hero and a certain kind of, I think specifically masculinity, which is important when you're looking at Jotaro, because Jotaro doesn't have a dad. And it's like, okay, oh my God, I love how the end of part 3 is so funny, because there's this fucking insane like 4-episode battle with Dio. It's like the most down to the wire, hardest fight in the entire series. Jotaro finally, like, he unlocks this fucking hidden power to at the very end and like uses it to beat Dio, fucking obliterates him. And then he's standing there and he goes, Dio, you lost for one reason and one reason only. It's because you pissed me off, dude. You really made me... Oh, I was so mad back there. And it's like, it's not... I love that it's a bad line. You lost because there's such a build-up to it, and then it just... You really pissed me off, dude. And then you remember that he's like 17, and he doesn't have a dad, and he's grown up on these like... Clint Eastwood action movies, and he's just trying to be cool. He's trying to be a cool grown-up, And this is his idea of what a cool, grown-up, heroic man is like. He's got to have some kind of a one-liner, you know? He has all these stupid fucking one-liners, like during the Steely Dan fight, when he fucking punches him through a building, and then he takes out a piece of paper he'd been writing on, and he goes, "Here's your check." He's like, "You're welcome for the knuckle sandwich. Here's your check." He's so stupid. It's so dumb. And that's like what he's trying to do. He's like grasping at straws for how to grow up and find his way in the world. And you look at him in part 3, and then you see just this one scene in part 4, and it tells you so much about how he's grown, that he can even like, again, because he can do things that care about other people, right? And he looks out for, and he cares about his friends a lot. He's got it inside, and he can act on it. He often acts on it like through violence, but to like verbalize it is very different. It's a very different thing to like do something nice for someone versus saying something very kind to them. Those are different things, and some people struggle with one or the other. And it's a really revealing moment, I think, for him. And then the one thing that everyone focuses on this scene, on this scene is, Jotaro, a stand literally can bring people back to life. Like, you literally did that for your grandfather at the end of part 3 when you started his heart again. And like, yeah, it's kind of funny to talk about. There's also like Limp Bizkit, which kind of basically does that in part 6. It is kind of funny to talk about, like, haha, yeah, right? But there are like genuinely people who think that that's like a problem, and like, did Araki forget about that? And it's like, okay, think about it. Think about the scene. Jotaro has just stumbled into Josuke's life, apropos of nothing, right? He's been there like a few days, rocked his world, told him like who his real dad is and all that. And now also there's like a serial killer, and he feels a little complacent in roping him into this thing. And suddenly there's real consequences, and Josuke has lost his beloved grandfather, who, mind you, I'm sure Jotaro would have loved to have a grandfather growing up around him. I'm sure he would have loved to have Joseph around. Or something like that, right? Or whoever Holly's dad was, I don't know. Like, I'm sure he would have really appreciated that. But Josuke's had taken this severe blow. Like, this is a really traumatic event for a 14-year-old, right? And all he wants is he just wants Josuke to, like, accept what's happened and maybe, like, feel a little better. He's just trying to comfort his, well, oh God, technically uncle. But they have, that's kind of the joke, right? Is technically Josuke is Jotaro's uncle despite being 10 years younger. But Jotaro really, it's like the reverse. The roles are reversed. Jotaro is effectively like the uncle here. He's basically trying to comfort his nephew after a horrible traumatic event, and they're literally looking at the corpse. That's why he tells them that. Maybe he could even be thinking, besides the time that I literally started my dad's heart again, or my grandfather's heart again. But for the moment, Josuke like needs to hear this. This is something that like emotionally he has to hear. And that's like the purpose of that line. It's not like a plot hole. It's not that Jotaro just forgot about what happened. Araki had literally just written part 3. His memory isn't that bad. Yeah, I like that scene a lot. I really appreciate Jotaro as, I think he's fine as a protagonist, but I really like him as a whole. I like Jotaro a lot, but it's hard to explain it if you've only seen part 3. And it was hard to explain it to Kat while we were watching part 3, because she was like not super hot on Jotaro. But I really like him in part 4. You get a little bit of him in part 5, like a little bit. And then in part 6 as well, I think is like, it's a really satisfying character arc, and that you see him going from 17 to like 40. And I think that the subtlety of Araki's writing is really undervalued by a lot of fans. It's sort of frustrating. This used to be a bigger problem, I think, with people who only consume the series through memes, or not even that, but like they do watch it, but they don't really like think about it. There's a lot of people who watch JoJo and they only like, okay, it's this funny, zany series that's like crazy and wacky, and that's all true. But there's like real substance underneath, and there's like real stuff going on, and character arcs. And I think Araki's writing is really interesting. I have come to really appreciate what I think of now being like all caught up on part 9. I reread part 8 before part 9 came out. And I've kind of seen, I feel like I have a much better understanding of the grand arc that JoJo is, that it's like, yeah, it's all these smaller parts, which themselves have their own little story arcs within. But really, it all forms one long arc, this one big artistic expression that develops and it changes over the years as Araki himself changes as a person. And there's a lot of really intriguing things and like themes to discuss. That's why I'm really interested to get to like part 6 and actually like finish watching it. I had read the manga. I never finished the anime. Because I think part 6 has stuff that flew way over my head. I did not understand really like Poochie's, I'd say, ideological motivation in part 6 for a very long, maybe even an embarrassingly long amount of time. But looking at it now, I think I also just sort of failed to really think that hard about it. Partially because I didn't have like a ton. I was sort of racing through the series. There's this thing that happens where you go like, oh, I want to get to the next part though, and then you kind of like speed through the end of a part. And it's a shame. And reading back through part 8 made me like it a lot more. It bumped it up to like my 3rd favorite part, flaws and all. But I really like part 8 on reread. But there's these people who like, I don't know. There's a lot of people who really have no idea that JoJo is anything beyond memes. And it's a little frustrating because like occasionally you'll meet someone who, you know, watches JoJo or is into it, and you're like, oh, cool. And you get to talk about it a little bit, and you get through like the surface level, like, what's your favorite part? Who's your favorite JoJo? Have you read the manga? Are you caught up? Or, you know, like that stuff. And it's like, I do think it's like really fascinating to talk about like all the stuff you learn about Dio in part 6 and all the stuff with fate and understanding destiny and stuff changing. And then you get to like the fucking corpse universe after like part 7, and there's like the flow of energy and stuff, and it gets like there's someone was, oh my god, like the most recent chapter of part 9, someone in like the Reddit thread, like the discussion thread about it, was like, oh, here's this fucking crazy book that Araki has absolutely been reading because he's like directly referencing concepts in it, and I forget what it's called. It's called, oh my god, it had some wacky title. I don't remember, but it's this like, I was reading like the Wikipedia article for it, and it was like, yeah, this was written as a philosophical work or something. It's like, it started as like a scientific thing and it's shifted into like a philosophical text because it went like so, it goes so off the rails into craziness. I'm gonna actually literally I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna go look up what that book was called. Okay, I found it. It's called Anti-Oedipus: Capitalism and Schizophrenia. A 1972 book by French authors, the French, Guy Deleuze and Felix Guattari. I'm not going to give them I will not give the French the dignity of me pronouncing their names right. The former a philosopher and the latter a psychoanalyst. It is the first volume of their collaborative work, Capitalism and Schizophrenia, the second being 1,000 Plateaus from 1980, 8 years later. Okay, cool. In the book, Deleuze and Guattari developed the concepts and theories in schizoanalysis, a loose critical practice initiated from the standpoint of schizophrenia and psychosis, as well as from the social progress that capitalism has spurred. They refer to psychoanalysis, economics, the creative arts, literature, anthropology, and history in engagement with these concepts. Contrary to contemporary French uses of the ideas of Sigmund Freud, they outlined a, quote, materialist psychiatry modeled on the unconscious, regarded as an aggregate of productive processes of desire, incorporating their concept of desiring production, which interrelates desiring mechanisms and bodies without organs, and repurpose Karl Marx's historical materialism to detail their different organizations of social production, recording surfaces, coding, territorialization, and the act of inscription. That was one sentence. Yeah. So that's like what the main character of Part 9's like worldview is based off of. like he's writing about some shit. And a lot of people just want to talk about the memes. They just want to talk about the memes. I just want to say there's more to life than memes. But anyway, part 4 is great. I'm really enjoying it so far. It's going by very quickly. It's been a real breeze. And then hopping off of that, a quick aside, because if I'm talking about JoJo, the Steel Ball Run anime got announced. Now, I don't want to be... I don't like to retread old ground, you know? And just, I don't want to be the one to talk for the one gorillionth time about animating horses. I don't know how they're going to do it. So instead, I am going to, I trust David Production. I think that if it's even just okay, then it won't matter. Because the story of Part 7 is so excellent that I think like a tiny bit of shoddy animation occasionally is, I don't know, it's permissible. Go read the manga anyway. So I'm going to come up with the same thing that I did for I remember when Part 5 was coming out. Because Part 5, Golden Wind, is my favorite part. And for the anime, I had a small checklist of things that I just needed them to get right. And I'm going to put all my cards on the table and do the same thing with Part 7. So, a couple things that I need them to get right with Part 7. Just things that are personally very important to me. And I think many people would also agree. The True Man's World arc. Don't fuck that one up. Don't fuck that one up. I don't know how. I'm really excited to see Catch the Rainbow. I think it's one of the coolest stands in the whole series. It has one of the coolest looks. I'm so sad that guy never made it into like one of the fighting games. Because it's such a cool... I know it only works during the rain, but it's so fucking cool looking. I think that any kind of cool visual representation of that is... I will be satisfied, because it's such a neat... all the raindrop stuff and like walking on them and turning them into stuff and turning his body into the... It's so neat. It's just like endlessly... It's such a shame it only shows up for like one arc. God, I wish there had been more of that. What else do I want to see? I'm assuming that they are going to stick to the manga in the depiction of Funny Valentine and keep his like earlier pudgy design, which I don't have a problem with. Let's see. If they... I'll make sure I'm like getting the yeah. Okay. This probably isn't going to happen, but just take out the entire high voltage arc. When we get there, and we will, I'm going to have a big long segment about high voltage and why I fucking hate it so much. Part 7, it's got a bit of a slow start, I'd say. It really kicks in after, I don't remember the chapter count, probably like a dozen or so chapters. After like the first real stand fight or two, it really starts, it hits its stride, and then it never really stops. And it's just excellent front to back. And then like when you're like an inch from the finish line, race analogy, you hit high voltage, and maybe I'm being dramatic, but it almost tanked the entire ending of the part for me. I fucking hate high voltage. Thankfully, the ending is good. I like the actual ending, but there's this, everything around it is great. It's amazing. But that is genuinely, there are two things that there are two things that I would genuinely point to in JoJo and say, Araki should not have done this. Like, this should not. The first one was bringing Avdol back. I thought that was a really bad decision. I didn't like it. I know that some people, and it's not like, but I know he was planning on doing it. I just think it was a bad decision. I think it like kind of hurts the story. And the other one is high voltage. Pretty impressive that it took him like, what, 20 years to make another mistake, in my opinion. Like a storytelling foible. But yeah, he did it. Unfortunately, it's just this big black mark on the ending. I wish that it was just taken out. It doesn't even have to be there. It's completely unnecessary. I have this huge rant that's been building for years, and I'm gonna unleash it when we get to that part of the anime. Yeah. I don't have that many other things with part 7. Most of it is just like, just adapt it. Just adapt it straight up. I'm very curious how they're gonna do the Who Shot Johnny Joestar arc, because that whole thing is like really weird. That's a very confusing arc. And there are things that I was confused about in the manga that then got kind of rectified for me in the anime. I don't know. It's like Who Shot Johnny Joestar is supposed to be confusing, like to the extent that you question, like, does he even get shot? What's even happening? And I'm really curious as to whether or not they're gonna adapt it that, I don't know, if it's gonna be any more intelligible. It does technically kind of make sense. I think he like retcons. I think he like retcons it later. It's so anyway. I'm very excited for part 7. I'm really curious about what all the usual stuff. What's the ending song gonna be like? How many episodes is it? Because part 7's pretty long. In terms of sheer page count, it makes up like more than like some other parts combined. Is the 39 episode count gonna work for it, or I predicted at one point, I thought that they were gonna do 2 seasons. They might need that time. I don't know, because some points you really gotta let breathe. I remember in the first third of Stone Ocean, which is the only part of it that I watched, that I felt like they were kind of rushing a little bit. It felt like they were rushing a little bit through parts that I wish hadn't been rushed through, because there's a lot of fun character building, hanging out stuff that happens in that first third, and zooming through that, like the Marilyn Manson arc or something, and kind of cutting out certain little asides, I think detracts from the group dynamic. Part 6 is already the part with like the weakest group dynamic, in my opinion. And the pacing didn't really help it too much. But anyway, I'm very excited for part 7. It's a classic. It's some of the best writing in the whole series. It is, depending on your expectations, I would generally say it's actually like lives up to the hype. Like it's like one of the highest rated manga of all time for a reason. It's actually really, really fucking good. And it's awesome that we are actually at the point where you can adapt that. There was a point in time where it was, long before I'd ever even heard of the series, where it was considered an unadaptable manga. Like, it's too weird, you can't sell it to people. You just, you can't do it. And then, I don't know, the David Productions really proved people wrong and adapted it not only, faithfully, they didn't really have to change anything, but leaning into the personality of the series and the things that made it unique. Turns out there actually is a real audience for it. It's not just the wacky Japanese. Everyone can be a little wacky. So the fact that we made it all the way to Steel Ball Run is pretty crazy. I look forward to that. I look forward to a future JoJolion anime. Fuck, I'm really excited for JoJolion now. Man, I like JoJolion a lot. Now, to wrap this up, I want to talk about an interesting experience I've had that's technically taken... It's been a long con, which is that I finished a book the other day. I finished writing a book. I have been... So when I graduated high school, when I was in high school, I got really into writing. I got really into fiction writing. I wrote a couple, I don't even know how long they are. But I wrote, a couple of, fantasy adventure novels, Western fantasy, alt history. That was kind of how I looked at it. Adventure novels. That I had I don't know, that was really important to me in high school. And I discovered a real love for writing. And I wanted to be a novelist. That was my plan. I'm so stupid that when I graduated, I was like, I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to be a novelist. And that's a little risky. So I got to have a backup plan. And my backup plan is YouTube. So I put out the Galileo video and it got 200 views. And I said, well, I got a backup plan and it's called being a novelist. I'm rocking 2 offhand weapons at the same time. You can't even tell what my main gun is. And I started a book back in 2021. Yeah, I actually looked at the history, the document history. February 1st, 2021. And I have been working on it on and off over the course of 5 years. If I was actually less of a procrastinator and was better at managing my time and staying focused on it, probably could have done it in 2, to be honest. But I think finishing it now has been, perhaps in some way it might have helped just because I've had a lot of time to think about it. The story for the most part has stayed the same. I want to offer, I don't even want to talk about the plot or anything. It's a vampire novel. So there's that. That's your little taste. And it's just a first draft. So when I say I finished a book, I don't want to say it's finished with an asterisk. I finished it kinda. It's not, I wouldn't call it ready for publication probably. I sent it off to a couple people and some old teachers of mine who helped me out a lot in high school. And now I'm just kind of sitting on it for a bit. But I'd like to talk about the experience, because for a lot of people, writing a book is this sort of mythical, really difficult thing. And it's hard in the way that a lot of other things are hard, which might not sound very useful advice, but I think it is, because it's one of those things that people put into this special category. I don't actually think that writing a book is hard. It's hard, but it's not hard in like a special way. It's not hard in like a unique way. If you have like worked at anything that was even like kind of a real project and finished it, you can write a book. Like if you graduated college, you can write a book. If you fucking, I don't know, if you trained for like a marathon for like a few months, you can write a book. Anyone can do it. I will also say, I know that a lot of people have this kind of like anxiety about writing. They call it the fear of the blank page. I do not have that, which is a really useful skill to have when part of your job is, well, you know, writing scripts about stuff. And I can kind of just like freestyle it, and that's not like an issue for me. So maybe everything that I'm going to say is like, like you're like, well, this guy, he was just born different. Maybe I was just built a little different, but I really do think it's possible. I can talk, and I want to talk about a little bit of how I did it, which is the first thing that I did. So when I wrote those books in high school, I was just kind of going off of, I had it all in my head. And then I would write it. I called it a chapter. It's probably just a couple pages each. I would write like a chapter weekly. And then I would upload it actually online to my school's creative writing website, of which I was the president, because I was one of the only people in the club and I cared the most. So that like kept me really consistently writing. But I was just kind of, I had an idea of where I wanted the story to go. I knew like what the ending of each book was going to be, but I wasn't always sure exactly how I'd get there. I didn't write that much in the way of notes. I just kind of had it all in my head, and I sort of worked week to week, which was really fun, to be honest. It was definitely like an escape from how stressful school was. When I decided to sit down and like write a book, I decided to take, you know, maybe just writing, you know, by the seat of your pants is a good strategy for some people. I decided to try a different approach, which was to actually plan a little bit. So the way that I did that was that I had a basic premise. I knew where it was going to take place. I knew when it was going to take place. I had an idea of like the main characters who would be involved. And then I had like the basics worked out in my head. And then I sat down and I started with an outline, and I structured the outline very particularly, which was, I used the South Park method because it actually totally works, and it honestly makes it a lot easier. So the South Park method is the method that Matt Stone and Trey Parker use to write South Park episodes, and how they can get stuff out so fast, because it's a really useful formula for organically building out a story. And however, it's and so and however, or therefore and however, something like that. And it basically, it's a rule of thumb, which is that you have plot beats, moments of the story that you would like list in bullet point order. This is the way that the plot goes in bullet point order. And in between every single one of those bullet points, you have to be able to put therefore or however. And if you do that, sometimes doing the same a couple in a row, sometimes every other one, you know, depending on the cadence of the story, you will just create a story. It's like weirdly easy. So this thing happens. Therefore, the character decides that they really want this. Therefore, they go here. However, this is the case, and they can't get it. Therefore, they go to someone else, and that person needs to be for help. But however, that person, and you can, it's like pretty easy. It's like surprisingly easy. As long as you have an idea of like the basic arc of the story, it helps give it a lot of structure. So I literally just had in my outline paragraphs which represent the plot beats of just, this is basically what happens. And a lot of them are very short, of like, this happens, the character goes here, they feel like this, maybe they talk about this. This is the next thing that introduces the next moment in the story. And then I have a little bracket, and then I, line break, and I do a little bracket, and then it's I think it's so and but, just to make it easier for me to write. So and but. They do this, so they do this. This happens, so this happens. This happens, but then this happens. And I just kind of like went along that path, and I can't say anything about how successful it was, but in terms of, I'm not telling you how to write a good book. I'm just telling you how you can write the book. Because it's very scary for a lot of people, and a lot of people are like, oh God. And having that kind of a structure and a guiding narrative, skeleton, was very helpful for me to go back to and reference. And I changed a lot of things as I was writing and as I went along. Sometimes something makes, excuse me, sometimes something makes total sense on paper, but then you actually get to writing it and you go, how do I actually make that happen? How do I actually get, like, how does this conversation go so that this actually happens? How do I go from this, like, this thing to, how do I transition from this point to, like, what's the actual inciting, okay. And then you just kind of got to, like, work with it in the moment. But you know what you have to do, right? So that helps a lot. The second thing is that, wow, it turns out that if you just sit down and write a little bit, like every night, like every day, like I always write in the evenings, eventually it builds up. Like writing 500 words once a week isn't a lot. It never feels like a lot in the moment. But then like you do that for the whole week, and that's like, let's say like 3,500 words. That's like a pretty decent chunk. Like a standard novel length is like 50,000. That's like 1 week of work. What's 50? What's 50,000? Say divided by 3,500. That's 14%. Holy shit. So that's like 14 weeks. 14 weeks. How many weeks? There's 52 weeks in a... What the fuck? That doesn't even sound right. But yeah, like... If you were to just genuinely write like 500 words every day, you get a book, you get like 50,000 words done in a couple months. I believe the final word count for my book is around 63,000? Something like 63,500, something like that. So it's a little longer, but if you're shooting for like a minimum 50K, yeah. And it's like, I don't know, it's not like rocket science. It's not like Herculean. You can do it. I'm just trying to be encouraging. I am not special because I wrote a book. I'm very normal. And you could do it too. So that was cool. It was the actual moment of finishing it was very interesting, because I had decided, I was not initially planning on writing an epilogue, and then I decided as I was nearing the end that I would I really wanted to write an epilogue to wrap up a couple things. And as I was writing it, I wasn't really sure where I would stop, because I hadn't planned for that. I hadn't written that in the outline. I just kind of had a rough idea. And I wrote, the end of like what I knew would have been the end of like a scene. And I kind of looked at it, and I was debating on whether or not to add something else that I was thinking about. And I thought, no, actually. I read the last few words and I said, these should be the last words of the book. I think that this stirs a kind of emotion in me that I feel like this is the note that I would like to end on. And I just kind of like left it there. And it was weird because it wasn't like, I don't know. It like at the very start of this podcast, I talked about finally winning that last round of Flesh and Blood at the tournament, right? The last game I played, I won, and how much of like a catharsis that was, how much of a release of emotion, how good I felt, right? From that experience. And when I wrote the last words of the book, I really didn't feel like that. It was just kind of like I had this feeling that you have internally when you're just kind of going and going and going. And then I was just kind of done. There was like no climax. There was no big, I'm done. Yeah, there was no like rush of adrenaline. It was just, I was done. And then I was just kind of left in this sort of, I was left in motion with nothing to do. And it was very odd. It was very odd, but it felt right. And saying that like, yeah, that is the end. I don't know. I just kind of walked into it. So it was an interesting experience. I haven't really felt like that many other times in my life. I will say that part of my motivation for finally finishing it and like getting off my ass and doing it was that it was, I'd always had this thing in my head that like I would really like to finish a book. Publish maybe, but finish I want to write a book by the time I'm at least 26, because that was the age that John Romero was when Doom came out. And for some reason, that was like this goal in my head of like, if I can at least write a book by the time I'm 26 and I can hit the Romero age, I won't feel like I'm a total fuck up, like I'm squandering all of my potential. And then like the long shot was 23, because that was how old John Carmack was when Doom came out. And then around the time of my 23rd birthday, I oddly enough wasn't even thinking about it. I was just kind of like walking around. I was taking a walk around New Year's, and I was thinking to myself, you know, if I get like a third of the way through my 20s or a quarter of the way through my 20s, and I haven't like finished this stupid book, I'm going to feel really dumb. I'm going to feel really stupid. I should do that. And yeah, and then it kind of just adds up. Where I was at a point for a bit where I was like, wow, I'm like a couple thousand words away from being done. That's like kind of shocking. It's like, it's actually like very realistic. Like it's very close. If I had really locked in, I could have gotten it done by the end of February. But it didn't happen. So April it is. Yeah. So that was, I guess, my experience writing a book in the background over the last couple of years. I don't know when, if ever, it will be available. I don't know if I would ever send it to a publisher. I guess I could. I could try. I plan on trying to get it published traditionally. But I'm totally open to self-publishing stuff. My whole history is kind of self-publishing. So I'm not against the idea. I've definitely thought about it. I can use all that YouTube clout, you know, those 8,000 subscribers to really kickstart, you know, get an audience for something like completely out of the realm of my typical online presence. I might make it available to read it. You know, I think it would be fun to do an audiobook of it too. I like doing readings and narrations. That would be fun. Yeah, so that's just kind of a thing floating around in the background now. I have other ideas for books, and I've started and stopped different ideas over the years, because this main one was the thing that I was like, I should probably be spending time on that. And so, yeah, maybe I'll kind of get to those now. So that's cool. It's kind of, you know, it feels a little freeing. It feels a little freeing to focus on other stuff. And that's about it for book talk, and probably for this podcast. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to draw this to a close. If you've been listening this far, thank you for listening to me ramble. If you have a question, you can leave it down in the comments below, and I will definitely get to it next time, but please phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. I've been Tygan. Go check out the most recent video on the main channel. I also had a couple videos, short little bite-sized videos I was uploading on the side channel, Cellar+R, that you can check out. I think those are fun. I'd like to make a couple more of them on like little ideas, just things that were not big enough for like a whole video, but little games that I find intriguing. I got the Patreon, I got the coffee, and I'll see you next time. Bye.